We are met here to undertake a development of the mind as was taught by the Buddha Gautama over 25.5 centuries ago. Which can provide an insight into what we really are and to what comprises us, and can lead to the taste of the bliss of the concentrated mind, and can lead to the taste of the magnificence of the after effects of the experiencing of the truly sharply defined moment here and now, a dimension of the mind called nirvana. Thus, this undertaking is not a trivial fad. This is a effort a comparison of which you will find not in almost every other method of meditation of which you're aware. Now, before we start the course formally, let us put up the lights, please, and become acquainted with each other just a little bit. The opening comments were deliberate to remind the old students of this procedure, those that have taken this work, of the seriousness and what we are trying to do, and to tell the new students of the seriousness and what we are trying to do. You both see it from a different view at this moment. As is true with everything that we do, we can only see it from our view and our understanding at the moment, and that changes constantly, you see, or can. I'll say it once more, slightly differently. This is not a new procedure just dry off the printing presses last night. This effort that we're undertaking here is old and tried and true and proven, and it reflects to the best of our ability now to represent that which was done by the Buddha in the days of his teaching of men and women on the face of the earth. This is one of the many ways that he taught the prime object of the Buddha's teaching, the development of such a sharp cutoff of the experience of now that you can't even recognize that the event has taken place while it's going on. It can only be made aware by the after effect, after the event has taken place. The purpose of his teaching was to open a dimension of consciousness normally unavailable to minds outside of the dispensation. It can occur outside, but not usually controlled. In fact, one might say almost without the fear of being inaccurate. Outside of dispensation, it is not controlled. It can arise, but a person doesn't know what's occurred, nor how to do it again. We're going to practice a culturing of the mind headed toward the attainment of nibbana, or, for those that are aware of the Sanskrit term, nirvana. And for those that have never heard of that phrase before, This is what the Buddha was teaching. The ability to adjust the mind for an experience outside of your normal range of experience. For what purpose? To experience what a state of existence is that has absolutely no suffering within it. Which, of course, is what all procedures, methods, religions, philosophies somehow try to shoot toward. That eternal bluebird of happiness, that elusive thing, that there must be something that will give me surcease from my suffering. And that's what you're here for, isn't it? Somehow or other, you would like to penetrate that existence of trouble that you're in. And at the moment, you probably don't realize how big that scope of trouble is. It will start to become clear as time goes on. But before we start the formal course, this is the time that there may be questions any time. And there's this evening, before we start, all the questions you want to ask. See? I'll say a few more comments and then we'll see about questions. It will be desirable to set the stage this evening for the work here. And the course manager gave you some information a little earlier about what goes on here. I'll supplement it with one or two items. This place is a sanctified site of meditation. The site includes all the buildings that you can see, including the caretaker's home, all of the A-frames, all of those outside constructions, all of the land interior to those, the perimeter roads around which you can walk, and out into the woods along those paths, 100 or 150 yards or so, reasonable distance out. Please stay on the site of meditation, sanctified site, throughout the duration of the course, unless you have permission to leave by the teacher. And that permission is granted to the course manager and anyone that he appoints for the purpose of the maintenance of this effort here. So as some people leave from time to time, don't take that on as license that you may also leave because you see somebody else do something. Just recognize that action goes on here, and please stay on the site. The sanctity is real, and we're not going to press the issue whatsoever. Just recognize it as one of the realities of this place. The schedule was discussed earlier, and for the new students, it doesn't take more than about a day to catch on to what it is, especially when the meals come around, you see. And you'll catch on fast. There were some comments made about advantages of trying to live this environment now for yourself and the others that are here, and I'll make some more comments on that right now. It will behoove a person here to let go of anything that they've been familiar with for these next 14 days, or 13 days, 14 days, 2 weeks. If you have come to learn this procedure and this method, give it a chance. Take it on and set aside those things that you've done before for obvious reasons. You're wasting your time here doing anything else, just the same as if you were going into a class to learn cooking, the ladies, and you were sitting there doing your needlework. You see, you'd be wasting your time in the cooking class, wouldn't you? In fact, why would you have gone to the cooking class if you weren't going to learn to cook? And the same with the fellows. If you're going to take up weightlifting, you're surely not going to sit there and play the game of chess all evening. Or why did you take up weightlifting? So the same here. If you came here to learn this, then give it a chance. The reason I mention this now, this is for the new students primarily, is that as the days go on, you may have a tendency to try to do anything familiar to get away from doing this. Right? And you'll get inventive and clever. You will look for any excuse to keep from looking at yourself. Because that's the name of this game here. You're looking at yourself. You're going to find as you sit that there's going to be no place to hide anymore. And you're going to see yourself as you are. And whether you admit it or not, or finally recognize it or not, of course that's your, I was going to say problem, that's your decision. And this is deliberate because the topic that we're trying to investigate is this thing right here. We're not interested in the almost infinite topics that can be talked about out there. As the Buddha pointed out, if you can learn about this thing, you're going to know about those anyway. But here's where you put your attention. There isn't anything more interesting in life than yours. Is there? Really? The most interesting object for you is you. Not astronomy, physics, needlepoint, cooking, weightlifting, chess, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism. Oh, yep, that one too. None of these are interesting as your own life is. What you're trying to do usually in any of these topics is to get something that gives you a moment of pleasure, a moment of pulling away from the uncomfortableness of what you're in. You see, if you don't see it at the moment, you will as time goes on. The most interesting object of existence is ourself. And it's within the understanding of this thing that you can understand more about existence, you see. It's a growth process. And at the level of consciousness and concentration and ability that we have today on the earth, it's a slow growth process. It isn't something that usually occurs in a moment. It takes a while. So, in this course, we're going to be planting the seeds within ourselves of the mental culturing for looking within ourselves and trying to become more acquainted with what we are. And in the process of the mind development, on the way can be experiences of intense suffering and intense pleasure. The purpose here is to look at the reality of what we are. We're going to do it without laboratory equipment, charts, symbolisms, sounds other than words useful in passing information about what we're doing, fragrances, tones, bodily activities, stances, contact one to another. We're going to do it by settling all of those means of excitation down, stilling the mind, quieting it, getting it more concentrated, and then turning within and beginning to experience a level of awareness unaccustomed to you at the moment. And balancing the mind process in such a way that for those that will finally be able to do it, and there's no prophecy whatsoever, I'm just saying it can be done. The mind can be balanced and intensified in its single-pointedness, concentration, and detached enough from everything it clings to that it's possible to have an experience of the real moment of now. Real moment of now. And you won't even recognize it occurred while it's going on. You can become aware of it only after the fact, which is exactly backwards from what almost every other procedure that you're aware of or have ever heard of is showing. The attempt being to bring the mind to a state of some excitation that you can be aware of strongly. You see. The reason I mention this, it's one of the very first aspects of the difference between the views we usually have and the right view of existence the Buddha was pointing out. The right view of Nibbana is completely backwards from what you have ever even thought about it, if you've ever thought about it. You see. This topic of Nibbana is going to come up from time to time because we're not going to be afraid to speak of this reality. On the way, there's going to be possibility of advantage to you insofar as becoming acquainted with this thing. A development of the mind, the effort, balance, concentration, awareness of your emotions, awareness of feelings, awareness of how your mind operates, that perhaps is a little unaccustomed to you. And as you go, you're going to find that there's going to be a purification that takes place. Purification of the mind, the body, and of these views that we spoke about now, points of views. It's done systematically and unfolds as time goes on. In order to, you might say, give ourselves the best chance, there's been some effort done in developing the conditions here at this site. Sanctity is one that I just mentioned. And all of the things that I just mentioned a moment ago are advantages for trying to maximize our chance of catching on what we are. You see? We're not going to have charts on the walls or any kind of visual excitation, and I suggest that you also close all those books that you brought, because I guarantee you the thing that you're going to be doing here you will not find in those books. Now, it's not a mystique or anything like that. It's simply that it isn't written up. This is an oral passage, and the ones that you're reading about don't apply. Even if you've heard the words mindfulness and other means of trying to develop what's called vipassana meditation, which is insight, that is not what we're doing here. So your books are going to be primarily distractions, confusion sources. So I suggest closing them. They're either that or they're mental lollipops, the kind of thing that you would like to lick, because there's where you can get moments of pleasure, moments of distraction from what you're doing. So leave the books closed. Take sparse notes if you wish, but don't become Hemingways with your diaries so that you're spending all your time note-taking, because as long as you're note-taking, you're not meditating, and that's another waste of time. Sparse notes are okay. We're not interested in any incense, perfumeries, smells, nothing like that. Except we would like to also, we're not interested in perfumery, nor unpleasant body odors by not keeping clean. So both extremes are not useful. There won't be any incense burned in here for any kind of rite or ritual. The gongs that you hear are simply mechanics of of simplicity of the schedule during the day. There's no chimes, gongs, songs, incantations, mantras, or anything else used for the purposes of this meditation. It is not a worshiping type meditation. It is not, at these stages here, what we're doing, it is explicitly a personal meditation. Now, there's a lot of people here, but what it is primarily your own effort. We're not going to be engaged in group action except individually. In other words, there won't be any group singing, group chants, or anything like that, you see. There's one or two sounds made appropriate later in the course, but we won't worry about those. The thing is that this is a place for silence, least distraction, and turning yourself within. More about that as time goes on. We're not interested here in stances other than the easy one, the most natural training posture, and you're probably in it right now. By that I mean most people will find this cross-legged posture the most, or sitting, kneeling, either way, or in chairs for persons that wish to do it that way. This is the most useful posture. By that I mean there won't be any dance, extended hatha postures, tai chi, this type of thing. These are not what we're here for, you see. If you wish to develop those, I suggest that you do those in classes for those purposes, you see. There won't be any symbolic lighting. The reason for the dim lights here, it's a practical way of getting low illumination. The only purpose for low illumination is that it's the least distraction for the early stages of meditation that we'll be undertaking very shortly. And you'll find it out for yourself. As you go out in the bright sun and try to meditate, there will be distractions that are eliminated if you get in a dimly lighted place. So that takes care of most of those obvious settings around this site. The only thing that's posted primarily is the schedule and one or two other pieces of business from handling the maintenance of this place. And that schedule is terse. It just has, you'll see when you look outside. Any questions so far? So that's some of the things that we're doing here. You notice that the site is remote, and it's an advantage. However, they're going to be natural sounds we're not going to be able to do anything about. The man-made sounds we would like to do something about. Try to minimize those. Let's start now with this room. This is meditation room, and it'll be open 24 hours a day. It is open 24 hours a day. It has been ever since we started here. Anyone that's in this room, sitting, just one person, is working. That's what they're here for. Please respect this room, and here are some points of courtesy and conduct in here that's useful. when you come in or out, walk carefully. Don't trod heavily like you're probably accustomed to. Walk softly so as to minimize your distraction upon other people. When you sit, try to rustle the robes as little as possible. All of these things are being mindful, considerate, careful about the other persons here. Try not to distract them much. Because you'll find that when you're sitting the next hour and somebody comes in and rustles, then you'll catch on why we take turns being careful with each other, you see. There are 3 formal group meditations during the day, and I think the schedule was already cited, wasn't it? What they are. And in those formal group meditations, I'll review the times again, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, 1 to 2 in the afternoon, and after the evening discourse. Let those 3 formal group meditations be ones where you don't leave the room except under emergency circumstances, because that'll minimize the distraction during that time. Outside of those hours, then we can come and go, including myself. I'll be coming and going for sitting outside of those 3 meditation formal hours. Those hours will be terminated either by myself leaving or a comment made about which will terminate the time, you see. Outside of that, though, come and go as you wish. While in here, let's observe one point of respect in the passage of the Dhamma. Please don't point the feet at the teacher or this position if the teacher isn't here. In other words, at this place, regardless if the teacher's here or not. Don't point your feet up here. Now, holding the legs up this way is not considered pointing the feet. It's when you set them out straight in front. You must do it for relaxation. Turn about 45 degrees. Just don't point up here. In the act of vipassana meditation, there's sometimes some sounds a person may make, sobbing or something, which are okay. Those kinds of sounds are right. But in this room, there's sounds that aren't useful, and those are the sounds of sleeping. Either the long, heavy breath, measured breath of being asleep, or snoring. Those are useless sounds. They're a waste of time on the individual's part, and they're a heavy distraction on anyone else. The sleeping sounds are the most disturbing of sounds. So if you notice your neighbor doing that, just gently nudge, and the person will be glad that you helped them back, because they've been unconscious and they're wasting their time, you see. And they'll be glad you helped them out. Now, there's one other point about the room, and I'll remember it. Look at that. So these are all assists in setting the stage for what we're doing. We'll also be further setting the stage by helping to minimize interaction between ourselves. Now, there's a community of 40 or so people, and we'll be living together for 2 weeks. But as time goes on, you'll see it'll be an unusual community. It isn't something that you're usually having a chance to experience. We will be living according to some precepts. These are completely volitional. You take them on your own. You see, you're not forced into them. But they're to your advantage to take them on personally, and it's also to the advantage of the group to live them, as you'll see. We'll try to abstain try to abstain from doing the things that I'm going to mention now. And these are the precepts that we'll be taking here in a short while. Trying to not kill any of the beings around here. Normally we don't have any trouble killing human beings, but I'm talking now about the animals, and the birds, and the insects, and anything. Well, no swimming beings around here right now. But the animal kingdom, including the birds and the insects. So we'll try to keep from killing sentient beings, you see. We'll abstain from stealing, simply taking something that doesn't belong to us. And if you need something, simply ask the Sangha manager. Don't take somebody else's property. We'll abstain from lying, and we'll have another aid for that in just a few minutes about making that one very simple, very easy to do. We'll abstain from sexual misconduct, which in this site, now all of these that we're talking about are while we're here. You can do as you like once you leave, that's your karma, your action, and that's perfectly right. But while we're here, it's to our advantage, mutual advantage, to try to honor these conditions. You know? And the sexual misconduct in this site, only here because of we're trying to minimize excitation, you see, is even such things as just contact or just eye contact with a flirtatious manner, you know, or speaking. In other words, minimize that kind of contact. And it's misconduct here, you see, is highly exaggerated. Those things are outside, and think nothing of it outside, of course. But here, we're trying to minimize distraction. And that can be a distraction, as you're well aware. And abstain from intoxicants and drugs. Now, most people didn't bring along their vodka. I don't think, didn't they? And I'm sure that most people didn't bring along the marijuana and the things you pop in the mouth and you put in the veins. If you happen to bring any of those things, leave them in your suitcase or give them to the Sangha manager. But we'll probably get them back. And also, that last one includes these things too. Anything that you can purchase at the drugstore for your own nuisance ailments, such as aspirin, bufferin, bromosulfur, milk of magnesia, eye drops, ear drops, nose drops, cyanide, you know, all those things. And also smoking, either marijuana or tobacco, you see. Smoking. There's advantages in honoring this on the site. And because what we're trying to do is act of purification. That's one of the facets of this thing. And we're trying to uncover, you see,